Hello, and as Alfred Hitchcock would say, good evening. And welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, the dimension where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, and as always, joined by Jay, and I believe this is our 50th episode, which
Oh
this
wow.
wasn't planned or anything. I just sort of realized that recently. This is our 50th episode, so it's kind of cool that we're using it to kick off this season's or this year's or whatever sort of big ambitious series, our Masters of Film series, where with each episode we're going to take a really well known and respected director and do one of their films, and then probably talk a little bit about the director in question as well. But yeah, this is our 50th, which I just realized the other day. If anybody's on Letterboxd, if you follow Jay or I, Jay has made a list of all the movies that we've covered in order. And in looking at the list, I realized we were at 49. So this should be number 50, unless I mess something up. So that's kind of cool. Coming to daylight, yeah, because of the nor'easter that came up the coast yesterday. We canceled beforehand because I said, "Oh, I might lose power." Yeah, I absolutely did lose power, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. And today, because eventually everything turned to rain, you would know how much snow and stuff there was because it's almost all gone now. And today was a sunny day, but we had high winds and heavy snow for a little while and stuff. And I lost power for only about 3.5, 4 hours, which isn't nearly as bad as I was expecting. So anyway, that's why we're here a day late. And yeah, so to kick off our Masters of Film, we are starting with at least a somewhat familiar name, Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, and who often, I think, does find himself in the conversation of best director of all time. He's definitely a name that gets thrown in
Sure.
there and stuff. So this is Alfred Hitchcock, and as we said before, we discussed, like, when it came to doing these movies by these notable directors, for the most part, we wanted to sort of maybe avoid their big obvious ones and do maybe a lesser known one, and that is why there were a whole bunch of sort of more classic and recognizable Hitchcocks who could have done, and what we settled on is Rebecca, which comes from 1940, which would have been his first ever Hollywood film. This is after he'd made the move over, after signing a deal with producer David O. Selznick in 1939. So this is his first. So this is notable as his first Hollywood film, and also his only film to ever be named Best Picture at the Oscars. And it's funny, we talk about Best Director, blah blah blah. He was nominated for the Best Director. He didn't win. He was nominated 4 more times in his career. He never won it. So as a guy who's sometimes as we said, in the conversation for Best Director, he never actually won the award. Late in life, he got some sort of lifetime achievement award from the Academy, throw a bone to him. But he never actually won Best Director for any of his films, which seems crazy when you think about it, but I don't know. The Oscars here were only a few weeks ago, and it's, it always brings up stuff like we talked about before, how hard it is to judge these things and what the criteria are, et cetera, et cetera. But there's just so many times where it just seems like such an obvious miss. I remember, like, lists always pop up, like the worst films to win Oscars and stuff like that. And some of them I do disagree with, but a lot of them it's like, yeah, why the hell? you know? Yeah, it just seems crazy that of such a prolific career, that he never actually wound up taking home the Best Director award. And also, back in his earlier career and around the time of director, this is still the era where actually when directors didn't get that kind of respect.
Mm-hmm.
They were just more seen as, a cog in the machine, whereas it was really about the writer and the actors involved. And Hitchcock is actually one of the main proponents of changing that. And we talked about, of course, our New Hollywood series, which was all about that, the auteur period. Kind of the in-between period leading into that was basically the French New Wave. And the thing was, a lot of the critics and fans of the French New Wave, and including some of the celebrated directors like Francois Truffaut, who we may just cover a little down the line in the series, was a big Hitchcock fan. And that was one of the reasons why perceptions of him started to change, because for a long time, at least the first half of his career, Hitchcock was more regarded as a guy that was good at delivering some good thrills and melodrama, but he wasn't, an artist. He wasn't a serious director in that kind of way. He was just more of a guy that could put on an entertaining movie, less so than somebody that could, deliver a solid piece of art. And so that's one of the reasons the perceptions of him changed, just because of how highly he was regarded by the French and fans of the French New Wave. So Rebecca, 1940, stars Laurence Olivier and what is the name of the actress?
I'm not familiar with her. I know that much. Who you're talking about? A Joan.
Is it Fontaine?
Yes.
Fontaine, right. And the only other name I know from there is George Sanders, who, if you've watched like movies in the 40s, 50s, 60s, he's often in them as like a sinister bad guy, and he kind of is in this one too, even though it's an earlier role. Our last episode, we actually did have Laurence Olivier in it. He was, although he's just at the beginning and the end, sort of a bookend thing in The Bounty. But this is him 44 years earlier, as a younger man. And he's our leading guy here, and sort of a gothic psychological drama, I suppose you'd call it.
Yeah, but I'll be honest with you, man. I really wasn't into this film until, I mean, at least the halfway point, because it seemed like it took it a long time to get started. But then when I rewatched it, I loved it from start to finish. So it's kind of just like knowing what was coming. Really had me going and invested for the whole time.
Yeah, I was wondering how you're going to feel about the slow build up, because it works in some movies and it doesn't work in others and stuff. And I think I kind of felt the same way at first, but then you just sort of, once you get into sort of the meat of it, you realize why the setup has to be done in sort of a slow, deliberate way instead of just getting to it.
Right.
Otherwise, the events that happen later can't really have the same effect unless we're, properly led into them. So, this is, he's a master of suspense. This film isn't really among his thrillers or anything, but it still does have sort of a pervasive feeling kind of dread or something going through it. Not to jump ahead, but yeah, my only problem is actually I feel like the ending, everything kind of goes too quickly. Everything, like a whole ton of stuff happens in like the last 10 minutes. Like bang, 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 which is kind of crazy.
I know. I was looking at the runtime. I was like, man, how are they going to wrap this up? And they did.
And, he's done that before. A lot of people forget about one of his most celebrated movies, and we'll talk about this later when we're talking about Hitchcock's career and some of the movies we've seen and what we think. And the big film I always thought is kind of overrated by him is North by Northwest. I mean, I still like it, but North by Northwest has that pivotal climactic scene, the chase on like Mount Rushmore and stuff, and they're hanging from the edge and stuff, and then it just jumps to the next scene, and suddenly everybody's safe and the two are getting married and it's over. So I guess it's a device he's used before, of sort of jumping around, because I'm not sure how the original novel went. I should have mentioned, so this is based on a novel of the same name by Daphne du Maurier. A lot of Hitchcock's works were based on novels. I'd say more than half probably, and a lot of the famous ones like Psycho and stuff like that, they're at least based on novels. And this is a fairly close adaptation from what I've read. There's sort of one major change that we'll get into.
He apparently was a big fan of this novel because he'd been trying to make this film for years, but wasn't able to get the rights. So
okay,
until he, like you said, was able to join the studio and get a little bit more money behind the project.
Yeah, that must have been what done it. What did it? Sorry, what done it? That must have been what did it. Yeah, getting the power of like the Hollywood studio behind him. I mean, this is only 1940, and he's already a super prolific filmmaker. He'd been making movies since the silent era, and even those were stand out. I haven't seen too many of them, but I saw, kind of the big one people to mention. I think it's 1927's Blackmail, and I think it's The Lodger. Sorry, Blackmail came later. The Lodger. The Lodger is definitely one of my favorite silent films. It's a really, really well-made film, and it just shows right from the get-go that he was sort of a director to be reckoned with. You always think of sort of that older Hitchcock, but he would have been fairly young. He was born in 1899, so the 20s, he would have been basically in his later 20s.
Oh wow, yeah, he was young. Wow.
So he had a fairly young start. It's just that he's just kept going, and I think obviously the image most people are familiar with is sort of like the late 50s, early 60s Hitchcock, especially when he had Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
That's what I was going to say. That's the Hitchcock I know. That's the Hitchcock I grew up with. Watching Alfred Hitchcock Presents in syndication.
Yeah, and that's where my Good Evening came from,
right.
if anybody's wondering. Also, just something I stumbled upon that's kind of funny is that when he did win one of his Oscars, but not for Best Director, but when he won an award for something, he gave what's still to date the shortest Academy Awards acceptance speech there's been. He got the Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award, whatever that is, in 1968. He said, "Thank you very much indeed," and then left. Got off. So.
Oh, yeah, it makes you wonder. Like, I bet he wasn't too thrilled with the Academy.
Yeah, probably. At
that point.
At that point, he'd already made
right.
tons of classic movies and stuff, and I don't know if you want to say snubbed because I never really know how much some certain filmmakers care about that, but a lot of them admit that it's a big deal to them because it's about getting recognition from their peers, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, I get it. Sure. Also, this author had also written the novel that Jamaica Inn was based on, Jamaica Inn, and she wrote, I don't know if it was a screenplay or a short story, but also the basis for the story that would become The Birds. So he went back to the well a couple times on Du Maurier.
Okay. I didn't realize she wrote that either.
Yeah. So what we got here is, I don't know, it reminds you a lot of something like Jane Eyre, in that you've got like a young heroine who just sort of winds up getting involved with a man and coming back to a spooky palatial estate that has secrets and stuff. In this case, it's Manderley. Our heroine is never played by Joan Fontaine, is never actually named in the movie. She's never named, which seems like a weird, kind of an odd choice, but whatever. Yes, she's a traveling companion for sort of a rich older lady, which was a thing back then, especially between the wars. That was like a thing that older women would often have. Men had them too, except they would always call them secretaries.
Traveling companion?
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that like rich men and women did have. As I said, usually with men they call them secretaries. Stuff. I came across them a lot because of stuff like Agatha Christie novels and stuff like that. For instance, the famous what is it called? Murder on the Orient Express. The bad guy that gets murdered, he has one. He has like a secretary guy traveling with him and stuff. This is sort of the same idea, except with women it is a little different because, as she points out, because she doesn't just do stuff for her. Sometimes she just hangs out with her, like she's like, let's play cards and stuff. But yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing that happened. So it was a real profession for, say, a woman, a young woman that didn't have a lot of experience. So
she's quite a bitch about it at times too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Get over here! I want to play some rummy.
Again, class is a big thing. The class system and stuff. This is 1940, so yeah, that's all a lot more prevalent. But yeah, so she's traveling with her. They're in Monte Carlo, and they meet this well-known rich widower, played by Olivier.
Doesn't she meet him on the cliffside first?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, yeah, that's the very first thing. She's gone. They're at like some resort or something, and she's gone down for a walk by the ocean, and she sees him staring out to sea over the cliff. And at first, she thinks he's going to jump, and she's like, "Don't do it," and stuff. And they have sort of a weird.
Was he not going to jump? I thought he was going to jump too.
I don't know. It's entirely possible. He reacts like he wasn't, obviously, right. But he was maybe at least thinking about it because his in a lot of turmoil and stuff. And then it's just about how she starts sort of dating him on the telling whenever she gets time off that she's going to go get tennis lessons and stuff. And the first one is pretty funny because it's just how forward he is. He's like, "Oh, are you much for tennis?" She's like, "Not really." And he's like, "Okay, then come with me." And he just like takes her racket and drops it like in a potted plant. It's like, "We're going for a drive."
Yeah, I love the rich man's courting technique. He's just like, "All right, come on, we're going over here." Like that's their date. Is just like, "Oh, let's go for a drive." Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's funny too. Like, there's a part where they're eating, and he's like, "Wouldn't you rather go here?" And he's like, "Then be a good girl and finish."
I was gonna say that. Yeah. I'm really not very hungry. Be a good girl and finish your meal.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up. That really cracked me up.
It's a different time, people.
Exactly.
It's a different time. But you can imagine why she'd be sort of swept away by him anyway. He's an older man, a handsome man, and a rich guy, all to boot and stuff. Our young heroine is supposedly not very worldly, kind of naive, and it's a big deal for her to just be on this trip and stuff. So, you get it all. You don't really think she's particularly stupid or anything like that. And even though he's acting this way, you have to remember it is kind of typical. It's not like he's really doing anything that's actually outside the norm. Although his weird, the way he acts, kind of distant and moody. Yeah, sure, but
Well,
that's just another thing that to this day the girls go crazy for. Girls love distant, moody guys.
Yeah. Oh, he's dark.
Mysterious.
He's mysterious. But no, I mean, considering he's, as wealthy as he is in this day and age, he probably could have been a lot more, I guess, forceful with things.
Sure.
And it would have been, acceptable.
Yeah. They never actually explain, I don't think, why he has money. Just, I guess, his family has money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of money, as you find out, because Manderley is just a vast, sprawling, as we said, palatial estate. And when they arrive there, there's like a massive staff to look after it. That's another thing that would die out in the next few years. But again, going up through the first half of the 20th century, at least in England, not so much in the U.S., but in England, yeah, you had this. The rich upper class lived that way. And the only way to look after these massive estates was to have a very large staff on hand. And I'm pretty sure that's like what is it? Downton Abbey is all about, right? It's about one of those. It's about one of those estates and about all the servants and stuff that look after it. Well, it's about the main people too, but the whole point is it makes, unlike most of the fiction at the time, where it just glosses, the maids and butlers are actually characters too. Now in this, there's so many that really we only focus on one, sort of a head maid who plays an important role. I'm trying to remember the name of the actress that plays her. I had all this, and of course, then I moved it.
Judith Anderson?
Judith Anderson, that sounds right. Yes, Mrs. Danvers, yeah. So you have Judith Anderson as Mrs. Danvers, who I guess is kind of like the head housekeeper in this. So yeah, so you've got this. So of course, okay, we didn't say it. So the whole thing is like they get married. Like she's about to leave. Her employer finds out like that her own daughter back in the States is going to get married. She's like, "Oh, come on, we're going to go." And this is after they've had several encounters with him where the rich sucks up to the richer. She knows he's even richer, so she spends most of the time just saying, "Oh, Mr. De Winter." Sorry, yeah, he is George Fortescue Maximilian De Winter, or as his friends call him, Maxim. So Maxim De Winter. That's one of the funny parts too. Like when they're on the date and stuff, and she keeps calling Mr. De Winter. She says, "Don't call me." And he's like, "Don't call me Mr. De Winter." He says, "I have quite a few impressive first names you can pick from: George Fortescue Maximilian, but Maxim for short." But yeah, so they're gonna leave, and then she rushes to him because she wants to be able to say goodbye to him. And he's like, "Well, you could leave with her, or you could come home with me." And she's like, "What?" And he's just like, "I'm proposing to you, you little idiot."
How romantic.
Yeah, how romantic. But again, not unheard of at all. It's kind of the way these men, especially powerful men, would act around women and stuff. And of course, she does agree, and they're very hastily married. And there's a great scene, though, after he leaves the room, after they call up her employer to tell her, and the woman just sort of, after acting all fake and happy about it, saying, "Oh, well, I'm delighted, and I wish you luck, and I hope I can come to the wedding." He's like, "No, we want to keep it a small affair. You go," and stuff. And then as soon as he leaves the room, she's just like, "You'll never make it." She's like, "You're not good enough for this. There's no way you can take over an estate like Manderley."
Yeah, she's like, "You haven't been doing anything improper, have you?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sleeping with him, I would imagine.
I know. Yeah, I know. Because, yeah, again, to modern audiences, well, that's kind of part of dating or courting, but no, this is, back then, so that would be improper because it's premarital. And, of course, there's certain people that still view it that way. That's fine, but it's not, certainly not really the norm anymore.
Well, I don't think it was really then either. You just didn't talk about it.
Right, you didn't talk about it. Just like it, just like they point out that, like, she has, like, her own bedroom, as if they don't ever share a bed or anything. It's like, this is your room on this side of the house, and this will be my room on this side of the massive house, because they talk about the East Wing and the West Wing and stuff.
Yeah, I like when he just leaves one day and just leaves her a note, like, "I'm going to London."
Yeah.
And
And
like,
she's really upset about it. And again, it does fit. It's kind of like that kind of moody, distant guy because they had some sort of conversation where he got mad. He got kind of mad with her about some stuff, and then the next day he just left her a note saying, "Here, you'll feel better now. You're deprived, or I'll relieve you of my company for a while." But of course, she's all upset. She's now completely alone in this house where she doesn't know anybody or anything. And he's just like, "Yeah, you'll be better off if I just leave." And of course, the film Rebecca is named after the previous Mrs. De Winter, who all we know at this point had died a year previous. And the whole point is now that she's at Manderley, Rebecca's presence and spirit just overshadows everything. Everything is about Rebecca, especially because of the housekeeper. Danvers, because Danvers was kind of like obsessed with her, and all she ever does is talk about how great she was and how beautiful she was and how everybody loved her and wanted to be with her, and the charm and grace and elegance and wit and all these things. And of course, it just makes our heroine just feel all the more worse, like there's no way she could ever live up to this great woman because she's just some little nobody that doesn't know anything about high society, blah blah blah. And so that's what really you've got going here. And
I think that's where the thriller elements come from, or all
sure.
from Ms. Danvers, because she's just a nutcase.
Yeah, she's such a menacing presence, and it doesn't take long to figure out like that she's got like an obsessive personality. The way she's going on and on about her dead mistress, and how she's lovingly stroking her clothes and stuff as she shows her the room. She's like, "Here, this was her room. I kept expecting you to ask me to show you the room. Isn't it the best room you've ever seen?" And then she's like, "Here's your clothes," and she's just like, lovingly stroking the coat and stuff like that. She's like, "You could never pull this off." Like, that's not her words, but that's what she's saying. Like, you can never wear these things.
Yeah, I was not a fan of hers.
Yeah.
That's the description of this movie basically just says that she's trying to go fill the shoes of the previous wife, but everyone wants to make her into Rebecca.
Yeah. Which isn't really
tormented by the memory of her husband's dead first wife.
Yeah. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. But Miss Danvers is just, man, start to finish, she's just completely bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, just constantly saying how that she can't do it and how she's not going to be as good. And I really think that she has a crush on the previous.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing that's prevalent through a lot of Hitchcock's works. Now, I don't think it was a homophobic thing, but it is true that a lot of the villainous characters are often at least somewhat hinted to be homosexual.
Really?
But it's kind of in a more tasteful way. Like, it's in Rope to a certain extent. It's in at least a couple others now that I can't fucking think. But that is something that he's done with some of his villainous characters. And of course, the other thing is Hitchcock also has a certain reputation for how he portrays women, but this movie kind of predates that, in that our main character is sort of a pure, good, and sweet heroine, but really the kind of woman that he likes to put in his movies is in this movie. She's just already dead. Because, the twist that we find out is that as great a face as she put on for society and stuff, and she was always convinced, of course, her husband is tormented by her memory because she was so perfect, was, of course, that it was all facade, that this woman, while beautiful and elegant and witty, was actually, a cruel sociopath that got her kicks by, manipulating people and hurting them and just doing whatever she wanted and lying and stuff like that. And that's very much in line with a lot of the female characters that Hitchcock would have throughout his throughout fiction, where usually they're very femme fatale type characters. In fact, this movie kind of kicked off the whole noir movement in the 40s. It's got all the noir aspects and stuff. Of course, the more pure noir would be, kind of the crime thriller stuff, like, with detectives and cops and stuff like that. But this is kind of like I don't know, some sort of like hybrid between sort of gothic romantic in noir, and it's really cool for that. And great use of light and shadows, and cool sort of haunting music. Manderley, they do a really good job of making Manderley seem very spooky and full of memory and history and all that stuff. I couldn't find out where they actually shot it. I'd be interested to know like what estate that is, if it's the same on the inside as the outside and stuff, because you see it from the outside a few times, and it's just this massive, sprawling estate. It's huge, and you know, the inside has like a big sort of foyer and staircase, and well, you know, all the impressive stuff you expect when you see these things, like Bruce Wayne's mansion and stuff like that. You know, all that stuff. But so yeah, getting into the main difference, of course, between this and the novel was something when we did our episode on Island of Lost Souls. We said it stood out because it was part of pre-code Hollywood and it could get away with some things. Well, this is 1940. This is smack in the code, and this is why they had to make a change because of the Hays Code. Now, in the original novel, he does kill his wife on purpose. In fact, he shoots her, although the circumstances are pretty much the same. She more or less sort of goads him into doing it, but she does shoot her. For the purposes of the Hays Code, they couldn't have him actually kill her on purpose. So they changed it into her trying to goad him into trying to kill her, and then he he pushes her and she falls, and he accidentally kills her. They had to make that distinction because that was one of the rules they had back then with the Hays Code about how you treated murderer and stuff like that. You always had to punish murderers and stuff too. For instance, the other thing, or you had to punish the bad guys, because for instance, sort of our main bad guy in this that's still alive. There's a couple of them, but one, of course, is Danvers. In the novel, Danvers doesn't die, but in this, Danvers goes down, which I think is better anyway. I think it's better in the movie with the mansion that she sets ablaze. I think it's a more fitting ending for her character anyway. She gets burned up by her own sort of madness, surrounded by her mistress's stuff. I think it's a better ending.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny that De Winters actually killed his wife and then covered up the crime. But he's not the one like pinned as the culprit in the film. He's kind of forgiven because it was, justified for one, but also an accident. She even says that at a point. Oh, not your fault. It was an accident. She died.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an accident that you poked a hole in the side of the boat and made it sink.
Yeah, did whatever you could to cover it up. But as he said, who would believe me? People would totally, and that was her plan, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Her plan was to die and make it, and either have him kill her or at least make it look like he killed her. That was going to be sort of her revenge on him. Because originally what she wanted to do was she wanted very much to do what she taunted him with, and it turned out she was incapable, which was get pregnant with somebody else's kid, and then lord it over him that kid would become his heir and inherit everything. But of course, then she finds out she's not pregnant. She actually has an aggressive form of cancer. So it's just sort of her Hail Mary play. Then, well, I'll make him think that, and then I'll get him to kill me, and then he'll go down for it.
Which is just crazy.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm pregnant with your child, so now you're going to murder me. But if I was dying of cancer, you wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it sets a good precedent again for these crazy femme fatales that have these plans. There's sort of a similar vein in what's it called? Double Indemnity. Mm-hmm. The villainess in that, her machinations are pretty extreme. And then you even get something like in the modern world, like Gone Girl, right? Think of that crazy plan she had to take down her husband. So,
You know what this reminded me of? The whole death, Natalie Wood's death.
Yeah, because it was out at sea, supposedly. Yeah. Of course, then you find out it wasn't out at sea at all, but yeah. And that's all been cropped up again, right? All that stuff about Natalie.
Yeah, it's all come up again, even though Robert Wagner's got to be on his deathbed, right?
He's old as hell.
God. We're hoping for some bedside confession, deathbed confession from him.
People are like, Christopher Walken, you know.
Apparently, he and Christopher Walken were having a homosexual relationship, and Natalie Woods found out about it, and that was the reason why he killed her.
That's very lurid. Very interesting.
I'd like to know what he has to say about it. I don't think I've ever heard him talk.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Lately, people are bringing it up again. They're like, "Yeah, get him to talk." I don't know.
Yeah, they opened the case again. I don't know what made that happen or what spawned that, but opened the case. Have been dead for 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It just kind of reminded me a lot of that.
So before all this comes out, There's a pretty good moment where she's trying her best to, you know, be her own person and try to help her husband forget about Mrs. De Winter. And she's like, "Oh, we'll throw one of those big balls like you did." And of course, she gets set up by the housekeeper that tells her like, "Here, wear this dress." And she comes down wearing like I think the dress that she'd been wearing the night before or something like that. And he flips out. Of course, he's like, "Oh, just get upstairs and get it off." And he's like losing his mind and stuff. And that's when she really realizes how, you know, far gone Danvers is, that Danvers was set her up. She's like, "Why do you hate me?" And she's like, "'Cause you'll never be her. You'll never be good enough." Like, you know, it's like, geez, lady, the woman is dead. And this woman had nothing to do with it. But man, your obsessive devotion is crazy. But it's too bad, though, because I kind of wanted to see that whole ball go in, like, swing. Like, only a few people had arrived when this happened. I kind of wanted to see a big scene of, like, a whole bunch of people and stuff, but we don't get to see that. So there are a couple times in the movie where I wish they'd shown a little more. That's one of them. And the other is the very end. I wished when they came back and the house was on fire, maybe they just didn't have the budget for it or whatever. Like we said, it just seems to happen so quick. It would have been cool, I think, if the house was on fire and we actually got scenes of the new Mrs. De Winter, which is all I can call her. She's not named, but like trying to like making a daring escape out of the house. Like when he gets there, she's already out.
Yeah.
Which is too bad, really. Like I would have liked to have seen like a scene where she, you know, she's trying to move from room to room and stuff is burning and falling down. You know, add a little more action and drama to it. It's not a huge deal, but it's just kind of too bad when he gets there. He's like, "Oh no, the house is in flames. Where is she?" She's like, "I'm right here."
Yeah, I know. I was.
You know, that kind of undercuts a little bit. The drama and the tension is like, "Oh no, what's she gonna? Oh, she's right here." And then they're just like, "Oh, Mrs. Danvers is still inside," and then you know you get her end, which is good. But I wish, I wish we could have had her escaping the house. I think it would have added a little bit to it.
You know, you could tell that it was limited by budget because there is never more than maybe 3 or 4 people on screen at the same time, and you know, obviously it was shot on a set, so it's this shot and just a few people in the shot.
Right.
Because, like you said, the ball, you know, there was only, 4 people there?
Yeah, only a few guests had arrived at the beginning, and she came down. Yeah, it would have been cooler if she came down, like, when the party was more in full swing, I think. You know, when a whole bunch of people were there, and then he could have flipped out in front of everybody. I think that would have been better, but anyway, yeah. But as we said about, like, the budget constraints and stuff, I mean, Hitchcock's kind of like the master of minimalism. Now, this film actually moves around and stuff, but what he's of course known for is having films that don't even have to move.
Right.
When you look at something like probably the greatest one is Rear Window, right? Rear Window is all basically one location and then a shot out the window. Everything's what he sees. Lifeboat is all in a freaking lifeboat. Rope is all in one apartment and made to look like it's all in one take. It's actually a couple takes, but it's done very skillfully to look like it's all done in one take. Here's a little quote he says about it too. "People believe that the cinema has to, by necessity, be horizontal in its form. That is, go to a great many places and locales. That is not so. It should be possible to make an interesting film in a closet with the door shut. The idea is to reveal human nature and behavior with your camera moves. This presupposes, of course, an interesting story and characters worth revealing." So yeah, he was really good at that. And as he said, like the revealing human nature and behavior, that's sort of his other thing too, right? All of his movies have like some sort of psychological element to them, pretty much, no matter what they're about.
Yeah, that's a great quote. I think a lot of filmmakers need to read that and kind of take that to heart because it seems like we're in the era now where more is more. You know, the more money you spend, the better it is, or whatever. But
right,
some of my favorite films are just like this. You know. It doesn't take a whole lot.
Well, as he said, like using the camera the way he does, like to reveal things about the characters. Whereas now we get quick cut. You know, even if an actor's giving a good performance, sometimes the director kind of ruins it because we don't see it the way we should. You know, which is really too bad. But yeah, as we said, I think a strength of this film is how it does take a while to get going, but once it's kind of over or getting towards the end, you really appreciate why it did it that way, because it helps reveal things about the characters. It reveals about how our heroine is just sort of swept up in all this, and she just wants to be a people pleaser because that was her job beforehand. Now she wants to please the husband. She's determined that she's going to be the new Mrs. De Winter and make this man happy. You find out that this guy at least has a good reason for being tortured and stuff by the memory, because it's even worse than what the original story was. And yeah, even some of the more minor characters we get to look at, as we said, of course, the crazy housemaid Danvers. But character we didn't mention is the other kind of villain, played by Sanders, which is the cousin of Rebecca, Jack Favell, who she was having an affair with. But the point was she had probably multiple lovers, is what's revealed. Is that she was a woman that just sort of did whatever she wanted.
Let me stop you there. Whose cousin was she? It was her cousin, right?
Yeah, they were cousins.
Okay. I'm just checking, and they were having an affair. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
he was one of her lovers. It's implied she probably had other lovers too, but he was one of them.
So we were to believe that she was going to trick her husband into thinking she was pregnant, knowing it wasn't his baby, right?
Right.
That's the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once he got on screen with that, trying to blackmail him, man, I was glued. That was so great. Like from there to the end of the film is just amazing.
Yeah. Because at first it does seem like, okay, now that the truth is, he breaks down and tells her the truth in that cool little house where he keeps all the things about how he covered up her death. And she says, well, I understand it, though. And he's like, yeah, but who would? Who would believe me? And stuff like that. And she's like, well, we can. And of course, it all comes to her. Because the whole thing was the body that they discovered a year ago was not her body. There was some other body that he identified as hers to take suspicion away. But now her real body has shown up. And it's in a boat that was clearly sunk on purpose, and now people are thinking murder, so he's in trouble. And then then Favell comes along and says, and he's finally getting people to believe that it was suicide. And then Favell starts to blackmail him, says because he's got this note from her, which that she certainly was not in any sort of suggest she wasn't in any sort of suicidal state. But Sanders, you can tell, from his, don't you love his introduction where he just walks in through the window and is like, hello there, and he's just such a dick the whole time. Yeah. And just before he leaves, he just gets that dig in. Oh, by the way, yeah, I come here sometimes, but he doesn't like it when I do. And then he's just like, I was her favorite cousin, which has a great ring to it once you know. It's like, yeah, you're her favorite, all right. So yeah, things move so quickly at the end, but that's not too bad. It just kind of amazes me how Hitchcock does that.
Well, they're kind of having it's not a trial, but it's they're interviewing witnesses and things like some sort of a boat specialist comes in, and he's the one who testifies that some sort of holes have been opened up that let water in.
But it was definitely, he would say, deliberate, that somebody scuffled in purpose. Yeah.
And it looked like that she was hacking or bashing from the inside, stabbing holes in it or whatever.
But she would have already been dead at this point,
right?
But they don't know that. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's like we've got our star witness here, but I mean, I didn't exactly understand what that was. I mean, they had a lot of people there just talking about the crime. In front of
it was an inquest.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm familiar with these inquests because they happen all the time in Agatha Christie things. It's whenever there's a death. It's not a trial. It's just when there's a death, they have an inquest where they decide what the circumstances were, so they can rule whether or not it was accidental or it might have been murder or whatever like that. So this was the inquest, which was a normal thing in England.
Okay.
Maybe they still do it. I don't know, but yeah, I know from that.
It's kind of informal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a trial. It's before there's any sort of trial. It's basically to rule whether or not the death was suspicious.
Okay.
And so all the suspicion turns on him, and that's when we get some growth from Joan Fontaine's character, because suddenly, she's finally become proactive. Now that she knows the whole story, and the transformative thing for her is finding out that he didn't love her,
right?
That he didn't love Rebecca. And that was the whole thing she felt so bad. Like, he's so tortured and he's so upset because he loved her so much. How could I ever live up to this woman, this amazing... Everybody around me says how great she was. And look how devastated he is. He loved her so much. But then once she finds out the revelation that he didn't love her at all, that he hated her and wanted to be rid of her and stuff, you know, that's a weight that's lifted off her. And finally she can be proactive. So then she becomes all about helping him. So that's a bit of her, like, transformation there.
Yeah.
Something that's funny. Didn't you think her sketches sucked?
Yeah.
Like, was that a deliberate choice, or they could just not get anybody to do good? Because I thought, like, wouldn't it be better to, like, make it so she at least has a little bit of talent? Because the whole point is, like, again, she's just this, you know, she's this young woman without much experience. She's this secretary companion thing. You know, she doesn't have a lot of experience in the world or skills and stuff. It's like, well, what do you like to do? And she's like, well, I do sketch. She could at least make good sketches, but her sketches suck. They show them several times in the movie. I'm just like, did they do that on purpose just to make us feel sorry for her? Or is that like what they just thought was good sketching? Because I didn't think they were good sketches at all. Better than I could do? Yes. But not good.
I like that her father was an artist that painted trees, or a tree.
Yeah, he was obsessed with the same tree, painting it over and over again, which is pretty funny. It makes me think of two things. One, it makes me think of back when I was my first year in the foundation year program, when we had all that philosophy thrown at us and we were doing Aristotle, and Aristotle talking about forms and what's the word? Like archetypes. The idea of a tree in your head isn't like any tree that exists in the world, but it fits for all of them. It is a tree. Everybody would see it differently, but it in your mind, that is tree and that fits it, this sort of thing. And the other thing was something that I saw years and years ago on the Family Channel, and then a few years ago, I was delighted to find out was included when I bought the Diamond or whatever, you know, the stupid versions of them. Anyway, it was a DVD of the Disney film Sleeping Beauty. For the supplements, they had a thing where they had three of the artists. They were like storyboard artists on it. And they had this cool supplemental part where just to sort of show their artistic progress, all three of them, they went out to like this park or something, and they all took up different positions in like sort of this field, and they all picked the same tree to paint. And it showed how they all painted the tree completely different with their different styles and the way they saw it. It was kind of cool. It made me think of that too. Like, yeah, artists are like that. So yeah, it's kind of a neat little thing about her character, her dad's. He's like, and I would watch him paint. And I would sketch sometimes. Like, he was so obsessed with this tree that he wouldn't give you any pointers because you can't sketch for shit.
I like the character Giles Lacey, who he's one of the guys that shows up at the ball, and he's also at that first dinner they have, which he's only one of the only other characters in the film.
The guy that dresses as a strong man?
Yes. Yeah. But he's at that first dinner, he's asking her, you know, what do you do? Do you do this? Do you do that? No. And she says, well, I sketch sometimes. And he says, you're not one of these people that paints upside down lampshades that represent the eternal suffering of man or something, are you?
Yeah.
Which really cracked me up. But he's also the one who drops the ball about how the wife died.
Yeah, about the boat.
At least you're not into sailing. Ooh!
Yeah. Oh. Yes. That's a bit clumsy. That seems like it's just necessary for the plot.
That was so like slapsticky the way he did that.
Yeah. It's just like they had to get it in there somehow. It's like, this dumbass can just board it out, I guess. Okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's funny.
Has to be some sort of aristocrat. Or an aristocrat, you have to have some sort of highfalutin hobby activity. You need to be into something that I guess rich people like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Even to shuffleboard, croquet.
Yeah, and of course there was Ben, the beach hermit, the crazy guy that who possibly even saw like them getting rid of the body, but he was just like, because he seemed to like he was terrified of Rebecca because he's like, she won't come back. It's like, what did she do to you? We knew she did all sorts of bad shit to people. What did she do to you? It's like, yeah, as we find out, like most of the time she's just laughing at DeWinter and saying, oh, I can do whatever I want. And she would, what was it? She rented an apartment in London where she'd have friends over and she'd fuck people and probably do drugs and stuff. And then she'd come back and be like, oh, I'm the woman of the manor, you know? So you can see how it was driving him crazy.
Well, I mean, why does Danvers love her so much? Like, she's got
Yeah,
to like actually be in love with her
as I
because
said, so the lesbian angle does work a little bit because it's just like, yeah, just I
she's a
mean,
horrible person. Why would you even like her as a friend? You know?
although she probably mostly only saw the facade. I
Yeah,
assume
could be
while she
right.
was at the house, she mostly, did her act where she was the grand lady, that everybody loved and respected. It was only really behind closed doors when she was with him. So we don't know how much of the real her Danvers saw, but you get the feeling Danvers wouldn't care anyway. She'd be like, well, that was her right. She
Yeah,
was so awesome. She could just do whatever she wanted. Because Danvers, yeah, was clearly fucking obsessed with her.
and that beach hermit apparently he was like a peeping tom because she said she was going to send him to the asylum. So that's why he
Ah,
would never talk at all because he didn't want to go to the asylum.
I see. I see.
Even though, like you said, he probably saw everything. He probably saw him come back after the boat sank and everything else.
Yeah. This was actually nominated for 11 Academy Awards. It won Best Picture and Best Cinematography. Best cinematography, black and white, because there was briefly a time where they had it for both, black and white and color.
When
I
when a
guess.
film wins Best Picture, generally that award goes to the director, right?
Yeah, you would think that he would be the one that would go up and accept it.
They gave it to Selznick,
Yeah, of course they gave it to Selznick.
which is just, oh man,
Yeah,
kind of insult to injury.
yeah, he didn't really have the greatest relationship with Selnick. Apparently, like Selnick got on his back a lot about stuff, which I mean makes sense for a lot of. I mean, you kind of expect it, but
Well, it just seems like he was just his paid hired man for 7 years. Like
Mhm.
he was just his, servant or slave or whatever. Like, you're my contract labor for this period of time, so you do what I tell you to. Which,
Yeah,
is so different from how we think of directors now.
yeah. As I said, he was sort of one of the pioneers for that, for like directors starting to get more respect instead of just being, the guy that directs.
Which is
As if
good, I think.
like they're like they're interchangeable, like anybody could direct, so yeah, for sure.
Got a Harvey Weinstein over here.
And I mean, he made quality films during this era. I mean, he also made Suspicion, which I think was the year before. I mean, year after. He made Rope a few years later and stuff. I mean, that's one of the things why Hitchcock has the reputation he has. Is not only was he prolific, but he didn't really even have a decline. I mean, maybe a little bit at the very end, but for the most part, it was just quality, quality, quality over a very sustained period, which was, kind of rare. Let's just see here. Suspicion. Oh, and Shadow of a Doubt, which is one of my favorites, was 43. I really like Shadow of a Doubt. So, I mean, yeah, he did great stuff through there. I mean, it was really the 50s that he started to really probably get his reputation, and that's when he had some of his big, big thrillers.
Right.
Strangers on a Train, Dial M for Murder, Rear Window, Man Who Knew Too Much, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, The Birds. But so so getting into Hitchcock in the broader sense, you've mostly just seen the big ones like those.
Yeah, probably just like the ones you just mentioned. Probably the only ones I've seen. I've it's one of those things I've always been meaning to go back and watch, just never have. Which I'd never seen this one, so I was glad you brought it up.
Yeah, this one I'd seen, but I don't know if I saw it all the way through. I definitely couldn't remember it, so it was definitely worth seeing again. So yeah, I thought that would be a good era to take from. But I saw the oldest one I saw was The Lodger, which is 1927, which is a silent film. I also saw Blackmail, which is 1929, which was a film that started as a silent film, but then became a sound film. In fact, it's the first ever British film to have sound.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And let's see, just looking at the where'd it go? Yeah, he was so prolific in the early 30s. Like that, those are definitely ones I've seen. There's a whole bunch that I don't know at all in the early 30s. But I never saw The Man Who Knew Too Much. which he would remake himself, by the way. He made it twice. He made it in 1934 with Peter Lorre, and then he remade it in 1956 with James Stewart. And I've seen the remake, but not the original. But let's see here. But the 39 Steps is another one that I've seen. I actually own it in a I have a collection of some old black and white movies. The 39 Steps is in it. That's one of his early sort of spy thrillers. What's cool about that is the main character is actually Canadian. And then it's just basically about this guy that gets targeted and goes on the run with some woman. It's fairly simplistic, but it's a good enough watch. Certainly, as a movie from 1935, it would stand out, I would think, for its sophistication.
One day on this channel, we should do both versions of The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Try to
At some point,
that.
way down the line, kind of add that to the list.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Because as I said, I never even saw the original, and it is a different idea too, to have a director remake his own film 20-some years later. That's not something that really happens. So, yeah, that's kind of a unique thing.
The original one is British, and the remake is American, so it may be nice to compare and contrast those.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The Lady Vanishes might be my favorite of the 30s. That's a really cool film. I remember a couple years ago they made a film called, I think, Flight Plan, that kind of ripped off the basic premise, because it's about how like somebody traveling on the train has this conversation with this old woman, then she can't find her, and she seems to disappear completely, and then she's asking people on the train about this old woman, and people are like, there was no old woman, and then you find out about that. It's kind of cool. I think that's, again, there's a whole bunch from the early 30s I've never seen. Like, look at these: Juno and Paycock, Murder, L Street Calling, The Skin Game, Mary, Rich and Strange, Number 17, Waltzes from Vienna. Never saw any of those. That's all between 1930 and 34. It's crazy. But I go back and forth with my favorite Hitchcock is. I mean, no, I know it's kind of an obvious one, but I really do love Vertigo. It's really the film that makes me really. I mean, I like James Stewart anyway, but as people Hitchcock know, he would do several movies. He was one of the main actors for Hitchcock in the 40s and 50s. I really love Vertigo because it's not even about. It's funny that it's called Vertigo because that's not really an important part of it. I mean, some part, but I mean, it's about obsession, really.
Mm-hmm.
Another sort of psychological movie that's really cool, and that's got what's her name? Kim Novak. Kim Novak is so freaking beautiful in that movie, and that's awesome. I love that movie, and it's a really great movie that uses great use of color for a color film of the era and stuff. But a film that we almost did for this one from the same era is Shadow of a Doubt, which is the one I always champion as the one that like people need to watch. Like even if people have like seen some Hitchcock, they probably haven't seen Shadow of a Doubt. A couple of years ago, they made a film that has kind of a similar concept to it that I liked quite a bit called Stoker. And Stoker takes a lot from this. In fact, it right down to the niece and uncle relationship, because Shadow of a Doubt is all about this teenage girl and then her uncle, who everybody loves, visits, and his name is Charlie, and her name is something like, I don't know, something with a CH. So her nickname is Charlie. So they're both Charlie, and they get along and stuff. But then like there's in the news, there's been like talks of these murders and stuff, and she starts to suspect that he's like a serial killer. It's a really cool movie. And so Stoker's kind of a similar deal in a way. Stoker's a good movie.
Yeah, I like Stoker. That's Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a Korean director. Is that Matthew Good? I think it's Matthew Good, who was in Watchmen. He played Ozymandias, I believe. That's Good with an E, not to be confused with the Canadian musician Matthew Good. Although I don't know too many of our viewers would, but anyway. But yeah, Shadow of a Doubt's really cool. Yeah, but it's the first time I saw Stoker, I realized, wow, this is a lot like Shadow of a Doubt, which I saw for a film course that I did about 10 years ago.
I'm just looking. I'm going to put Shadow of a Doubt on my list here. Oh man, Looking at the Stars channel, they've got all the big ones.
Nice. But yeah, there's a few of the big ones that I think are a little overrated. North by Northwest and Dial M for Murder, I think, are kind of overrated.
Yeah.
I used to actually dislike Strangers on a Train. I like it now. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like pissed off at it, but I like it now.
Yeah, a lot of those big ones I think are a little bit overrated, but my favorite film is probably Psycho, but I mean, just I think everybody loves that film. But next to that, probably Rear Window.
Yeah, Rear Window is like one of the most like sort of perfectly executed films there is, really. It's just done so well. It's like almost the template for so many movies going forward. I mean, it's a plot that's been like homaged and parodied to death.
Oh man!
Like every sort of like sitcom out there has had an episode that does it. Like that '70s show did it. The Simpsons did it.
I mean, like Fright Night is essentially Rear Window,
but with a vampire. Yeah,
right.
Very much so. But yeah, I mean, one of the main things that's in Hitchcock's films, that one first and foremost, but other ones too, is voyeurism, right? Mm-hmm. Voyeurism's a big repeated theme running through here. Psycho, of course, has it too. And yeah, what we get here for most of these early films is sort of the audience is the voyeur to a lot of this stuff. But when I need to rewatch Lifeboat because I don't remember it too well. I need to rewatch The Birds.
I like The Birds okay.
Yeah. I never understood why it has this great reputation. I mean, mostly just because it's unique, I guess. I mean, it is kind of a crazy idea,
Yeah.
The birds just all turning on us. And it has like a couple of really memorable scenes, right? Like them walking into the room and all the birds looking down at them and stuff.
Well, I mean, that whole, when nature attacks theme kind of became a whole subgenre in the 70s, 60s, 70s, I guess.
Sure. I mean, it's just so how influential. I mean, again, one of the things we'll be getting into when we talk about these directors is how influential they were. And obviously, he's right at the top of being influential, not just in suspense, but as we said, even creating whole genres and stuff. Like, for instance, Psycho itself, was inspiration for the giallo genre out of Italy that in turn would spawn, what become the sort of the modern day slasher.
Really? Okay, so Psycho came first.
Well, Psycho's 1960, so yeah. So really, that would be before any of the main giallos.
Wow, that's cool. I never put that together.
Yeah, the giallos formed in like the early 60s. Most people say 1963's Girl Who Knew Too Much, which is based on a Hitchcock title, The Man Who Knew Too Much. So there you go, right? Most people consider The Girl Who Knew Too Much the first true giallo, and yeah. It's really good, too. I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I love giallos.
Really well done movie. Yeah. That was one thing that was cool, too. About 3 or 4 years ago when we did an episode on them for the Sausage Factory, because I mean, I'd only seen a few, but it really got me into them.
Yeah.
I really appreciate them.
I watched quite a few, but we didn't get to talk about like hardly any of the ones that I had recently seen.
I have to say, speaking of which, recently on Shudder, I was so excited to see that what's it called? A Dario Argento film, Phenomena, was there, and I was so excited to see it. And it was a film I wanted to like so badly because I like Argento. I like what's her name?
Jennifer Connelly.
Jennifer Connelly, and of course the older guy from Halloween.
Oh, Pleasance?
Don Pleasance. So it had all these things going for it, but the movie was too stupid for me. It was so stupid. I really wanted to like it, and I just couldn't. It just went way over the line.
I feel the same way about it. People love that movie, and I've just never been able to really get into it.
It has, again, some things that I kind of like, but for the most part, I was just like, this is way too stupid. Even for a giallo, this is ridiculous. Because, I mean, giallos are over the top. I get it. Yeah. It's going to be over the top and stuff. Like, I love Tenebrae, and Tenebrae is over the top as shit.
Mm-hmm.
But
is there a different cut of that movie? Because I know it's called Creepers. Is Creepers the U.S. name?
Yeah, I've heard that it was. Yeah, it was heavily edited when it was released in the States originally and called Creepers. So I
Yeah.
didn't see that, but I
I
assume
don't.
it would have cut out like the gorier parts. I assume.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I've never got into it either. It's one of those films you think you would really like, but
Yeah, exactly. I went into it totally prepared to like it, and I was like, really, really? I must have thought that about 12. It's just so many stupid things. And I don't know, like sometimes the use of music just doesn't work. Just because the bad guy's coming at you and Iron Maiden's playing doesn't really do anything for me, you know?
it dates it a little bit, huh?
Yeah. You know, like Iron Maiden, fine, but just this idea that that scary music doesn't work. Maybe in 1985, it's like, this is really scary. You know, listen to Bruce Dickinson sing about angels and devils and demons or whatever. But you know, it just sounds like a rock song is playing while somebody
Yeah.
that's all I hear. It's like a rock song is playing while somebody's trying to kill somebody. But yeah, the movie's ridiculous. I really wanted to like it, but I just could not. I'm a big fan of Dario Argento and Giallos and Jennifer Connelly and stuff, but no.
Yeah, because was that the first thing that she had done before? Was it Labyrinth, the one she was in?
It was before Labyrinth, so maybe it was her first starring role. It wasn't her first movie though. She was in the year before. She was in Once Upon a Time in America, in the flashback scenes as the younger version of the lead actress, whoever she was. So that wasn't a starring role, but she'd at least had another role before that.
Man, once she started trimming her eyebrows, she was absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, I love her. Love her so much.
Like,
She doesn't look bad in any movie. Looks great in every movie to me.
What's that one where she's trapped in Target with that weirdo?
Oh yeah, James Whaley.
Oh,
Why do I remember that name? It's a stupid movie too.
That is.
She's hot. She's really hot.
She's yeah.
It's gonna bother me. I have to find the title.
It's a stupid title. Like it's not
Yeah, I know. 1991. I remember that much. Not really an era I like at all.
Career Opportunities?
That sounds right.
I don't know why I can remember that, but I just know it's stupid. But yeah, she's
Career Opportunities. And I was right. Once Upon a Time America is her first ever film role, and Phenomena is her first ever starring role. So
okay.
Yeah. But I think I talked about this before, but if you watch The Rocketeer, which was also a 1991 movie, I don't know if it's the clothes she's wearing or what, but her breasts look bigger in that movie than any other movie. Like, I don't know if she's wearing some sort of like push-up thing or something, but like, I've always had a soft spot for The Rocketeer, but one of the other benefits of watching it is like her chest is like boom compared to like in other movies.
They seem like obnoxiously big in The Rocketeer. Like they would be in the way of things. Like you can't do normal activities.
Yeah, it's weird. But I mean, she doesn't look like that in other movies. In fact, she looks quite slim. So I don't know. Yeah,
yeah.
One of my favorite actresses for sure.
Mm-hmm. I need to watch The Rocketeer again. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I mean, it fits into that kind of stuff I like. I always mean to buy the original comic because it's pretty cool, but it's another thing I pushed down the list. She's going to be, her next movie is going to be in the Battle Angel movie. Remember for years I was saying, like, instead of doing stupid, well, not stupid, but instead of doing, like, Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5, like, James Cameron was going to do this Battle Angel movie based on anime or whatever. Anyway, he doesn't have anything to do with it now, but there is one coming out. It's still produced by James Cameron, okay, but it's going to be directed by Robert Rodriguez. Anyway, she's going to be in it, which is pretty cool. Although I still don't know if it's going to be any good or not, because as we've seen, so many movies based on animes and mangas have very mixed things. That's the other thing. I still haven't watched The Ghost in the Shell. It's on my Netflix to watch. I just want to see it just to see. I know it's not that good, but at least they recreate a couple of the scenes, which is kind of cool.
What's a good one? What's a good live action based on?
There aren't any.
I'm just trying to think. Did anything turn out to be any good?
The best ones are ones that weren't based on any, but were just sort of influenced by them. You know, like the really The Matrix is what made that kick off. The Matrix heavily borrowed from a lot of that kind of stuff, and from 99 to say like 2004, 2005, it was sort of an en vogue thing to have a few movies like that in that style.
I've seen some decent Japanese live action films, but not anything I can think of recently. Definitely nothing from America. Like, I think of a lot of flops.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever see Ultraviolet?
That's another one that's on Netflix. Like, I watch it anytime.
Oh no, don't watch it.
I watch Aeon Flux.
No,
Which looks like the exact same movie.
I think Aeon Flux is a little bit better, but it's not saying much at all. But it's not based on anything. That's it. Ultraviolet is like they wrote all this for that movie. It, borrows from everything, but on paper it sounds really cool.
Oh, you know what Jennifer Connelly movie I still haven't seen that I always mean to see is House of Sand and Fog.
That's good.
Yeah, I've heard it's quite good, and I keep meaning to see it.
Ben Kingsley, I think, is in that.
Yep. Ben Kingsley and a few foreign people. But yeah, that's a movie that for years that's been on my radar that I just haven't gotten around to for whatever reason. So, thinking more Hitchcock here. But yeah, getting back to Hitchcock's influence and stuff, it wasn't even just genres and stuff like that, like Giallo and stuff. Like there were several movies that were like made basically as imitation. If people are familiar with the, I think it's Cary Grant called Charade. It's often cited as like the best Hitchcock movie that Hitchcock never directed. Because it's just such an overt usage of his style.
Oh man, you can look at a lot of people.
That's Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant.
Like Brian De Palma essentially borrowed everything he has from Hitchcock.
Oh yeah, exactly. Brian De Palma is just
which like great movies, but he'll tell you that too. That'll be the first one.
Oh, and it's so apparent. Like you watch Body Double. Body Double is basically just sort of almost a retelling of like Vertigo in some ways.
Yeah.
But exactly, De Palma is definitely like sort of the ultimate imitator when it comes to that. I really like Body Double, I'm just saying.
Me too.
It really very much is. It's kind of like a mix of Vertigo and Rear Window because it has the voyeurism stuff, him watching like in Rear Window, and then like the obsession stuff of and recreating. Yeah, it has the actress, recreating, trying to be like another person, just like in Vertigo.
I mean, it's almost just like a more modernized version.
Very much so, and I like it. It's cool. Yeah, it's a good movie for sure, and I like a lot of De Palma's stuff. The glaring thing is like people don't get about me is just how much I hate his Scarface. I hate it so goddamn much. I get absolutely nothing out of that movie except irritation.
What bothers you so much?
I guess it's just like it's super long movie to tell kind of a really predictable story that doesn't really have much going for it. Like he's just sort of he's an asshole and he gets his way for a while, but then he does, too much and it catches up with him. I don't know. It just seems like such a boring kind of story to me. And he's not likable, so it's hard to watch it as it goes. And I don't know. People just like it for its like, its timing. It's 1983. It's got like this 80s slickness to it and all the stuff about Coke. And I know every rapper everywhere loves it. I don't know why. Like, shouldn't it be a cautionary tale for you rappers?
Yes.
He doesn't end up on top. He ends up fucking dead.
I mean, once you get past the fact that Al Pacino is playing a Cuban guy,
I guess I can't get past that either. Al Pacino's done plenty of roles with his like crazy wild eyes, but this is the ultimate one where he's just like, ah. And I get it, his character's coked up a lot of the time, sure, but But no.
What's the other one? He does another one where he plays another Hispanic guy.
Oh God, I don't.
The one with Sean Penn in it. Oh damn it!
It's not ringing any bells. I probably didn't see it, to tell you the truth. But yeah, so no, I like De Palma quite a bit, and he is pretty cool in that, like, he likes to do homages to directors. For instance, that whole what is it, baby carriage scene in The Untouchables is just a direct homage or whatever, rip off of the Battleship Potomac, which is considered one of the greatest films of all time, a Russian silent film going way back. We're going to do a Russian filmmaker, not that one, but we're going to do a Russian filmmaker later on in the series.
In Carlito's Way, he plays a Puerto Rican.
Ah, right.
Also directed by Brian De Palma.
So I never saw Carlito's Way, but the novel was in what would become my bedroom when I was a little older, but at the time it was just the spare bedroom. There was a bookcase there, and I remember I used to like take out the book, and I remember at one point like there was like a sex scene in the book that kind of like I'd never like read a sex scene before and stuff. And of course it ends with guys coming in with guns. It's funny. It's like this guy's fucking some chick, and then some guys come in with guns and like threaten him, say like, I don't know, maybe they want money or something. They're like, we need you to blah 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 blah, like that. And then like when they leave, and I just remember the end of the paragraph, or even maybe the end of the chapter, was his penis had gone limp. Remember that all these years ago. Yeah, nothing will take it away like having guys bust in with guns on you. Sure.
Or make it that much more ferocious. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's just a line that I've remembered all these years later.
Funny. I think I actually like Carlito's Way more than Scarface.
I think I probably would if I ever got around to watching it.
It's not as well, it's definitely not as, Miami 80s style. Peaches and taupes colors and all the neons and all that. It's not all that stuff.
And it does some things kind of cool. Like in the original Scarface, there's like what is it? There's like a billboard that has like that. What is it? It says like the world is yours or something like that. And then in this one, what is this? Like a blimp that says it or something? I think it's a blimp. Anyway, it's kind of cool. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe in the original it's a blimp and this one's a billboard. I can't remember. It has that like this says like the world is yours or some bullshit. I don't know. It's been so long. I haven't seen it in many, many, many years because I hate it and it's super long. So it's not something I revisit.
Well, I think most people only remember the final scene. Yeah.
The shootout. Yeah.
And the cocaine right there at the end too. Like the pile of
my little friend. Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
I enjoy that in Grand Theft Auto. What is it? Vice City, because that's how the whole last mission ends. Like you're like the drug kingpin at the big Miami mansion, and everybody's coming at you, and you're blasting them all away. I enjoy that because I get to do it.
Right.
The old Grand Theft Auto. I'm trying to think of other Hitchcock films that I really need to see. There's quite a few, I suppose. But yeah, I would probably say my favorite is Vertigo. Then the one I just said, for God's sake, I can't Shadow of a Doubt. Then maybe Psycho, I don't know. I go back and forth between Psycho and Rear Window. Like Rear Window is probably the better movie, but Psycho, just has that really great appeal to it. And, I'm a big slasher fan and stuff, so, it has that aesthetic.
Apparently there was a chinchilla coat valued at $25,000. Then, God, can you imagine what the inflation would be on that?
Oh, my God.
It was loaned to them for the film. Nobody even wears it. It just is in the closet when Miss Danvers shows the area to the new Mrs. DeWitt.
It's not even the one she's holding and stroking lovingly.
Mm.
It's just in the background. That's hilarious. Wow.
It says, "Fill this. You don't even deserve to touch it."
Yeah. The extravagance of the rich.
Everything has been left exactly the same as the last day.
Yeah. As we said, it has a few parallels there to some classic literature. The whole setup is kind of like Jane Eyre, but the whole idea of everything being left exactly the same is kind of like in Great Expectations, where what's her name, Mrs. Havisham had left her house the same after she got left. Except to that, she left it in shambles. Yeah.
This is included in one of the 1001 movies to see before you die.
Rebecca? Nice.
I'll check that one off my list.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway through that list so far, so they keep adding stuff to it and taking things away. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's stupid. They need to leave it alone. Well, how's anybody supposed to get anything done?
As they add newer films to it every year,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, I really enjoy this film, but I like it more for kind of just like the influence it would have for stuff going forward. I think there's things that take sort of the style and stuff of this film and do it better later on. But I mean, again, I think this is 1940 is really great. It's just sort of a cool sort of opening for the decade, which would be like ruled by like noir and stuff. And this just does the noir elements so well right off the bat. And has some of the staples in it again, sort of. Except in this, the femme fatale is already dead, which is a really kind of neat twist. Like, there's a femme fatale here who's casts her shadow over everything and totally affects everything that's going on in the plot, but she's not in the movie because she's already dead. That's kind of a neat angle.
Yeah. You just imagine her as like the worst person ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
And even though it's it's such an old movie, it still translates just fine. You can still just sort of picture in kind of any era if you have a woman that's like her, that's like beautiful and charming and sophisticated, and she can win people over and everybody admires her, but she's actually like a sociopath that enjoys manipulating people and getting her own way and hurting people and stuff. Like that translates to any era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw any movie of his I've seen. Then he did Marnie, Tom Curtin, Topaz, Frenzy, and Family Plot. Now, Frenzy, I had many opportunities to see and just never did. Frenzy, as far as I could tell, was just sort of like him just kind of going back to his thriller roots. It came out in 1972. Because it's all about like a serial killer in London and all this stuff. Like, it almost felt like Hitchcock was just sort of like almost imitating himself like one last time. I don't know. Maybe that's why I didn't want to see it, because I guess it just doesn't live up to his other stuff. But yeah, there's at least 4 or 5 that I really need to see. To Catch a Thief I've seen, but don't really remember. It's another one of the Cary Grant ones. I don't think it's that good, really. It's just kind of... Yeah, you got Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. It's okay. But it's not as good as... Didn't they make a... Remember there was like an Asian show called that in the early 90s, To Catch a Thief?
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Let me just check and make sure it's the same title. Catch a Thief. No, wait a second. You know what? It was Once a Thief.
Once a Thief, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Once a Thief was a John Woo film from 1991, but then they actually made like a show about it afterwards, and I used to watch the show. I'm pretty sure it was a show, or it was a mini series or something. Anyway, yeah. So that's no relationship, but yeah, But anyway, Once a Thief's a pretty good film. You got Chow Yun-fat and Leslie Chung in there, directed by John Woo. Pretty cool. It's not like his normal violent John Woo thing. It's more of a caper film, which is kind of cool. But yeah, To Catch a Thief. Yeah, I don't really remember anything particularly good about it, but I will watch it again just for the hell of it. But it's not really on my list of need to watch. But yeah, the one I would most recommend to you and other people and tell people they need to watch is Shadow of a Doubt. Shadow of a Doubt is a really cool, interesting film, and again, it just sort of seems ahead of its time. And it's just like a lot of his films. It has sort of like a really notable climactic scene. I won't give it away, but there's sort of like an end thing with a whole thing with a train going by. That's really well done. That's really cool. he does that like every 2 or 3 movies. He's got like some sort of like, you know, really neat sort of action thing going on or something. Or something like in Strangers on a Train, the whole thing with the tennis match. You remember that? Where it's going back and forth between one of the murders and then the tennis match. Because the whole idea, right, he says, you know, is like, you'll have the alibi because you'll be at the tennis match while I commit the murder. And then they're doing it back and forth, cutting between the murder and the tennis match. It's really well done. I think he was the master of those sorts of things.
That's another thing that seems like it's been copied a lot.
Oh, absolutely. The whole sort of contrasting parallel shots. Yeah, parallels is a good way of putting it. Yeah, like events happening simultaneously, being shown like that, cutting from one to the other. If he didn't originate it, he perfected it. Like that.
There you go.
Yeah. What?
It's almost time for treats.
We're like an hour away. And according to the time change, it would feel even earlier. We had a time change, remember? Cats don't adapt well to time changes. It's hard to convince her what the time actually is, because she has her own internal clock. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to get redundant and just repeating stuff about Hitchcock, but hopefully we did him some justice, because he is truly one of the masters of film. And a big favorite of mine, because I always like noir stuff, gothic stuff, thrillers, you know, and there's nobody that's ever outdone him when it comes to the thriller. You know, there's some people that have taken elements of his and done it very well, but not in the consistent way he did. And pretty much like sort of any modern thriller that you like has some Hitchcock in it. If you like Seven, you know, there's some Hitchcock in there and stuff like that. Or you like, I don't know, something like what's that one with I can't remember anybody's names anymore. Fatal Attraction or something. Oh, you know, there's some Hitchcock in there.
Oh yeah, pretty much anything Michael Douglas did in the 90s.
Well, yeah, with some sort of like Hitchcock sort of thing. And I've said before, but in case people forget, I'd like to point out how much I despise the other one with Sharon Stone.
Oh,
I hate that
movie. Basic Instinct?
Basic Instinct. Man, I hate Basic Instinct. I hate it so much. It's such a crap movie to me. I've seen the sequel, too, which is, whoa.
It's... yeah.
But yeah, how come Michael Douglas was... I don't want to harp on this, but Michael Douglas is always, like, in these sexy thrillers, and he's always having sex with these awesome leading ladies. It's like, why? Look at him. Even when he was young, he was nothing to look at. He even did the Michael Crichton one, Disclosure.
Disclosure, yeah, he did so many.
Which is one of Michael Crichton's most boring books. Like, I love Michael Crichton, a big fan, but he's done a few boring books. Disclosure's one. The worst one is Airframe, which is so boring they didn't make a movie out of it. And like 99% of his stuff has been made into a movie, right? Yeah. Airframe could never be a movie. Man, Airframe is like 60% just like specifications of like airplanes. It's like 40% plot and 60% like airplane technical jargon.
Man, I'm guessing Crichton was an airplane guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was a lot of things, right? He liked a lot of different things, and he would write about them. I just finally read Eaters of the Dead, which is cool, and that's why I watched 13th Warrior, which is a kind of a decent, which is a pretty decent adaptation. Actually, they have to add stuff to it because not as much happens really in Eaters of the Dead. For instance, the whole cave thing is like 2 seconds in the book. It's like not even a page, and they actually, you know, they stretch it out a bit. That movie was actually one of the bigger flops of the 90s, too, although I like it. Maybe because it just didn't have any like notable names in it, really. I mean, Antonio Banderas and a bunch of Norsemen. Antonio Banderas playing an Arab. Make of that what you will. I mean, just people listening to that totally Spanish accent, being like, "Yeah, that sounds. He sounds like he's from Baghdad." Sure.
He's brown. He's good enough.
Yeah. But I do like the movie. It's fun. Yeah, I was on a kick of watching cave monster movies, so I watched both the Descent and the Descent Part 2. I'd seen the Descent Part 2, but I remembered nothing about it. You know, it's not bad. It's not really any worse than the first one. I like Juno. Juno is a good character.
Yeah, I like Juno too. So we've got Fatal Attraction.
Yeah.
We've got Basic Instinct, Disclosure. and The Perfect Murder.
Yeah. All movies where he's like at a cat and mouse game
That's
with
the exact same thing.
some femme fatale, you know, always.
But apparently he's a giver because he did get that throat cancer. That's why ladies love him, right?
Yeah, he was generous, generous lover.
I love how that's what he said about it. I mean, that is a pretty like suave thing to say, though. It's like, hey, man,
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
I did the crime. I got to do the time.
You know what's a crime? Here's a movie that I've never seen, The Game.
That's good.
That's like I got a Criterion release and everything, so it's supposed to be really good, apparently. And I've just never seen it.
It's really good. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't know how well it holds up, but I liked it quite a bit.
It's another movie that's been around forever, and I've had so many opportunities to see it, and I can't even tell you why. It wasn't just my dislike for him. Like, it was just other things. Because, I mean, I can put it aside. I've seen plenty of movies he's in. Saw Falling Down. That's okay,
Oh, I like Falling Down. That's David Fincher, man. You're definitely going to love that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fincher is definitely a Hitchcock fan. That whole dark noir aesthetic.
Hey, you mentioned 7 already.
Yeah, 7. But because of the way this week happened and some unforeseen stuff, we don't actually know what our next episode is going to be, which bothers me because I wanted to be able to tell you guys.
Yeah.
But we have our list of the filmmakers, but we haven't narrowed down some of what the movies are going to be for some of them, and we don't actually know what the next week's is. So I won't want to just throw one out now, but we'll try to get on it really soon to let you know over the weekend maybe or something like that. I realize we're a day late here, but we will get on that shortly. But yeah, as I've name dropped some of these names before, we've done Hitchcock. We're thinking Kurosawa, Truffaut, Tarkovsky. I think we had Kubrick, and a few others. So that's what we can look forward to going forward. I think we're going to do Ingmar Bergman. So yeah, we also want sort of masters of film and sort of an emphasis on some foreign directors from other countries. Really try to cover the bases here and get some films from different countries in there. So really excited about this series. So as we said, stay tuned to the Twitter and we will try to give you a heads up of what the next movie is and what the next director will be. And
absolutely.
Anything else on Rebecca?
I don't believe so. I think we pretty much hit everything. It's not aside for some trivia, I think we covered the plot pretty well.
Right.
And they didn't want Joan Fontaine to be the leading lady. Apparently,
wow.
Laurence Olivier did not want her.
I think she did a great job. I mean, it's not necessarily a huge, hard, demanding role, but I mean, she had to convey a certain amount of naivete and innocence, and she does that fine. It's not too hard when you can contrast her with the other characters, because the other characters are all so harsh for the most part, especially the crazy maid and stuff. But yeah, just sort of that wide-eyed innocence, and
exactly.
again, one of the neat parts about the film is you see how once she has the revelation that he's not devastated because he was in love with Rebecca, how she turns, how that she finally gains some strength from it, because now she realizes, oh, okay, so he's haunted by something different, not that his love for him. He really does love me. It gives her the confidence. She becomes a more proactive character and, helps him come up with a way to get out of getting in trouble for it. And eventually her death is ruled a suicide, which I think most of the sympathetic viewers would view as justice, considering what this awful woman did to him.
Yeah, well, I mean, we never mentioned that they went to go see the doctor, and she used a different name, first of all, but yeah, she thought she was pregnant, but it turned out she had cancer.
She used the housekeeper's name.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty funny.
That is funny. Wow, that's weird too.
I don't think it was her tribute to her. I think it was part of mocking her, probably. Well, at least she used the last name. She used the last name of the housekeeper.
Maybe she had a relationship with her too. Who knows?
Yeah, as we said, you have sort of an undercurrent there that maybe she had a relationship with her, or maybe she just knew how she felt about her, and she just sort of led her on, maybe.
Well, she found out the truth and essentially just burned herself alive. So I mean, she obviously like had strong feelings for the real uh, De Winters.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah. Just really, I guess the last thing I can say about it is I was kind of like you. I was kind of surprised by how much I really got into it. In that it has sort of a slow start, and you're wondering where it's going and stuff. And but yeah, it really won me over. Great atmosphere, good acting, music, etc. Stuff like that. It's not, as we said, it's not really the typical Hitchcock film, like, and it's certainly not the penultimate one or the one that you would bring up to like emphasize his style or body of work. But you can see all the groundwork that's there, particularly for the time period. It's 1940, so he's already done some thrillers and stuff before. But this is before he's gotten into his bigger stuff, and yeah, so you can really appreciate it from that standpoint too. You sort of see how it lays the groundwork for some of the stuff that was to come, not only in his own body of work, but also, films that will be influenced by his style. So it's got a lot of cool things going for it. Easy enough watch, 2-hour movie,
Yeah, a little bit of a slow start, but once it gets there, it's good ride.
And you appreciate again, I think, that the setup kind of needed to be done just so you can fully appreciate the way the characters react, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I appreciated it more the second time around.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna watch it again too.
Than I did at first because I was just kind of like, oh man, this thing is just taking forever to get started, because it's building, and like you said, it's no way to do that without doing it slowly like that.
Yeah, and there's a good atmospheric shift too, because at the start, except for the very first scene where he's acting all weird on the cliff, the rest of it is fairly kind of a playful, laid-back atmosphere. It's like, they're at this resort, and the woman's kind of mean, but it's more played for laughs in a way, because though she's mean to her, but she sucks up to him, and stuff. She's like, "Oh, Mr. De Winter," and all this stuff, and and then they're going on their little dates, and yeah, he's distant and mysterious, but they're having a good time and stuff. And then once they arrive at Manderley, it all kicks in. This air of oppression almost to it. This aura, the aura of Rebecca hanging over everything, which is done really well. The only thing the movie was really missing was like some like massive like portrait of her. That would have been even better. Like at the top of the stairs, there was just a massive oil portrait of Rebecca.
Wasn't there a big portrait of her, but up in her bedroom area?
Oh, maybe there was. You think I would have noticed? Okay,
I thought that's what she said her costume was from. I could be wrong though.
Oh shit, you're right. Okay, I just didn't know. I think you're right. Yeah, for some reason I was thinking that wasn't her. That was just a. Yeah, you are right. So it wasn't missing that. It had that. So there you go. Sorry, guys.
Those rich folks, and they gotta have their portraits.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's required. You gotta have them. You said when you're doing your opulent palatial estate. But anyway, so that's Rebecca, and some remarks, of course, on Hitchcock. Doesn't mean someday in the future we won't do Hitchcock again just for the sake of it. As Jay said, it might be a cool idea to look at the 2 versions he did of The Man Who Knew Too Much, which is a pretty neat idea. To the same filmmaker remaking his own film with over a 20-year gap. So that's kind of an interesting idea that I think we'll look into going forward. But that'll do for now. And as we said, we will let you know what our next director and film will be in our Masters series. So thanks a lot. 50 episodes. That's pretty cool.
Yep. So stay tuned to the Twitter, and we'll announce that on there. You guys can hopefully watch along with us for next week.
Yep. We'll let you know. So thanks a lot. I'm Cole, and that's Jay. And we'll be coming to you again, hopefully in a week's time. And till then, stay cool. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.